Generally, in a hard funnel, all the trails come into one major trail or two major trails, and they're very close together. Now, that would be a good hard funnel. I see funnels everywhere. They're not necessarily all of them made by terrain features. They can be made by ground debris, and I mean by that fallen trees or brushes or thicket. They can be made man-made. They can be made by a fence, a farmer.
Can you explain a term that you used several times in the first episode, which was long-range versus short-range funnels?
Well, all funnels are not created equal. And what I want to say is just man-made terminology. You know, a long-range funnel, generally speaking, in my mind, is used for bucks traveling great distances. It catches deer over, let's say there's a ditch that goes for 100 yards or a body of water that goes for 200 yards. Any deer runs into that's going to go around one end or the other. So that's a long-range funnel. It covers a lot of distance, plus bucks generally use that or that are traveling a long distance during the rut. Now, that could also be a short-range funnel. That particular funnel might not only catch that long-range movement. And when I say long-range, I'm not generally talking about the deer that moves through it are traveling long range. I'm talking about the funnel blocks deer from going over a long area, over 100 yards or 200 yards. But that funnel may be used by a deer in its core area also. It may not just be for long-range deer travel. That funnel may actually be inside a mature buck's core area. And you'll know it, generally speaking, if you've got trail cameras or if you monitor it in some way, because if you get 2 or 3 pictures of him in that funnel, say before the rut during night travel, during his night travels or even daylight, then you're guaranteed that funnel is in his core area. Generally speaking, the funnels that long range catch more of the bucks that are generally not got that core area inside their, but inside their home range, of course, or maybe outside their home range. It may be between 2 home ranges. But if you get a picture of a buck once or twice only during the rut in that funnel, then that is generally those long-range funnels that are catching deer movement during that part of the rut when they're going for miles during the day, or they may move miles during the day inside their home range and hit it, or they may be going for miles, literally going for miles, going outside their home range, going to their second home range, or inside both home ranges. So there's a big difference in funnels. Some of them will block deer movement for a long distance and some for a short distance. I don't generally hunt. After November 3rd, I generally don't hunt those short distant funnels. They are primarily for me to kill a mature buck either before or after the rut, starting October 25th. And then later on, possibly after the rut has wound down and he comes back to his core area. So those short-range funnels will funnel 2 or 3 of a particular deer's movements. Say he moves on this trail once and down this corridor once and down this corridor once. I'll try to find a place to push 2 or 3 of them together. So that double or triples my chances of success. Fate's a good example of that. I killed him December 5th. He was gone for most of the rut, like a lot of them do. But he returned back to his core area once the majority of the does was still out had gone out of heat. He was trying to find them. So he started working his scrapes again. So he was back in his core area, and that's when I killed him on a short-range funnel in his core area. So you can actually do that 2 times a year.
Bobby, can you give us examples of different types of funnels, like terrain features or maybe habitat features that you would classify as funnels, and then which ones would be long range versus short range?
Okay, long range and short range is not the only classifications. You've got one-sided or two-sided funnels. You've got hard and soft funnels. But example of funnels in most mountainous area, the most prevalent funnels are ditch funnels. And ditch funnels have two ends, of course. They're coming off a drainage or a drainage ditch, coming off, say, a ridge or a mountain. At the top and at the bottoms of funnels. Generally, the bottom is not very productive to hunt. The bottom softens up gradually. So you might have a trail crossing it here where it's a little bit deep, then it funnels out a little more and a trail crossing it here, then a trail crossing it here. They're generally always one-sided, where a lot of times the head of that funnel is generally two-sided. And plus, the bottom of the ditches are generally in a low area, in a bottom, and we got issues with swirling wind too. But so when I'm talking about ditch funnels, I'm generally always hunting the head of them, the top of them. They're a lot harder. The deer are trying to cross the first place they can, and it'll gradually get soft like the bottom. And then the first place they can cross is generally the heart of the funnel, because there'll be a trail coming, say, at this angle and hits it, and they're going up around the head, and then another at this angle hits it, and they're going around the head. And then they may be a buck coming from the top down, and he's wanting to go downhill. Well, he's going to go around the head of the funnel before he goes on downhill. So generally in mountainous terrain, drainage ditches, and then you have a lot of creek crossings. Sometimes you've got a wide valley. There's not much of funnel deer on a wide valley, but a creek. So a creek is the same thing. Both of these, there's two reasons deer use funnels, in my opinion. They may be more, but I know of two. And one is for security need, and the other is to conserve energy. The ditch funnel is to conserve energy, and so is a creek crossing. They're not going to climb down and drop off a real steep bank and have to run up the other side when there's a flatter place that they can cross. Generally, all creek crossings are two-sided, where most ditch funnels are one-sided. So you got a steep bank on both sides, and all of a sudden you got a low place. Nature has made a low place there, and they cross there. So generally, a creek crossing is two-sided, but generally they're a little softer. A lot of times the bank ain't low just in one precise 2-foot area. A lot of times it's a little softer funnel. So you've got trails spread out over a wider area. So a soft funnel, you have to, sometimes if they're too soft, if they're covering 20 yards or 30 yards, you might want to use some methods to tighten that soft funnel up. A hard funnel, generally you don't have to. But a one-sided funnel, then you definitely want to be careful. There's significance of knowing a one-sided funnel, because generally you can't put two tree stands at a one-sided funnel. Because on the hard side of the funnel, or the soft side, but on the funnel side, then generally a deer is not going to get downwind of you. But if it's a one-sided funnel, then there's going to be deer moving, say, 50 yards and 60 yards and 30 yards on this side of it, because there's nothing funneling the deer on that particular side, because it's a one-sided funnel. So generally a one-sided funnel, I want to put only one tree stand. In a two-sided funnel, you can put both of them, but you may have to tighten them up. It's according to whether it's hard or soft. Generally, in a hard funnel, all the trails come into one major trail or two major trails, and they're very close together. Now, that would be a good hard funnel. I guess I got off on the wrong subject, but we got creek crossings, we've got ditch funnels, and then in agriculture area, you've got funnels that just connect in cover or a low spot in a field. Now, those are made more for security reasons than to conserve energy. And I want to say this, a deer don't conserve energy because they're lazy. They conserve energy because they're a prey animal. They never know when they might have to run for their life. So they don't exert themselves more than they have to. You take a fence, for instance. A deer would walk 3 times further around to go through a gate than they would hop over that fence. They will walk 3 or 4 times further on flat ground than they would change terrain. So that's where most funnels come in to a situation there. I see funnels everywhere. They're not necessarily all of them made by terrain features. They can be made by ground debris, and I mean by that fallen trees or brushes or a thicket. They can be made man-made. They can be made by a fence, a farmer. Oh boy, a lot of people just overlook these. You got one property that's got cattle or horses, and they got a major fence, and usually that fence will stop at a drainage or a rough place. And man, and it may be right on a major road, but that is a great long-range funnel that bucks use to go from one property to another and travel long distances. And I always want to look for traditional sign. When I say traditional, I mean historical sign or traditional sign. I like to see old sign. I like to see sign made from 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe a tree's dead over here because it was rubbed many years ago. Maybe it's got a scar that's healed over from 3 years ago. Maybe it's got this year. When you get those, you're generally looking at a funnel that funnels bucks that are traveling long distances. They learn through years of movement how to best check the doe bedding areas and where the does frequent their feeding areas. They learn how to best check them with the wind by going certain routes. And they learn that those certain routes are also safe, generally speaking, on a certain wind direction. And that's when you find that real old sign and fresh sign and older sign. And most people, and I was guilty of it myself years ago, I just wanted to see the fresh sign. But I'm beginning to more and more understand the importance of sign made over a period of several years. I guess I answered your question and a lot more.
And a lot more. So let me ask you this. One, I guess, funnel that a lot of guys that we have had on the podcast talk about is a saddle, like a low gap going through across a ridge, that low spot. Now, I can see that from a gun hunter being very applicable, but as a bow hunter might not be tight enough in order to get a deer within, especially a compound guy, inside 40 yards, inside 30 yards, traditional bow hunter, closer to that maybe. Is a saddle, like a low spot in a ridge, ever something you ever pay attention to? Is that too big of a funnel for you?
I've heard that terminology for years. I guess that's some of the first funnels the old timers talked about or something. I've never once seen a major trail going through a low place. I just hadn't seen it. I'm telling you, I want those ditches with those steep banks. Now, I do see this, and it kind of applies to a saddle, I guess. I see the crown of a ridge. It gets up, if it starts up pretty steep like a cone, then I'll watch the deer going up the ridge. They'll reach a point where they'll go around the side of it. And there's no use them going plumb over the top. There's only one saddle on this property that I know of that's significant, but it's not a saddle you can sit back and look at a ridge line and see a low place. This is a saddle off the top of a hill. It's two ditches that come up, and there's just a little island of ground between the two ditches. And I've seen that before, but I really have not seen saddles that. Now, if you've got a ditch coming up from both sides, that can be a saddle, but you might consider that a saddle, but generally you can't look at the ridge line and see that happening. But that really is good. It makes a two-sided funnel. It pushes deer from both ways up to the middle. And they may be a little lower there too, and the deer going across the top may decide to go to that particular place and walk right up the side of a ditch. I've seen often deer walk right up beside the ditch, but generally when they do, when that ditch fades out, they turn and go across it.